Good morning, and before I say another word, I want you to look at your medicine cabinet or your kitchen counter right now, because there is a very good chance that something sitting on one of those shelves is quietly working against you, not against your intentions, not against your will, but against your biology, specifically the biology of an aging body that processes nutrients, minerals, and supplements in a fundamentally different way than it did at 40 or even at 60. I'm Dr. Nathan Collins, and in more than 3 decades of practicing geriatric medicine and longevity research, I have watched something deeply troubling happen across my patient population time and time again. Well-meaning, health-conscious seniors walk into my office carrying bags of supplements. They hand me the bottles proudly. They have done their research. They have listened to the commercials. They have read the labels. They are doing everything they believe they're supposed to do for their health. And then I look at what they're taking, and my heart sinks, because buried inside those bags are vitamins and supplements that are not helping them. They are accelerating the very decline these patients are fighting so hard against. And in some cases, they are causing serious, documentable, measurable harm. A landmark analysis published in the Annals of Internal Medicine reviewed the supplement use and health outcomes of over 30,000 American adults followed for a period of 6 years. What the researchers found genuinely shocked the medical community. For seniors over the age of 65, certain commonly taken vitamin supplements were not neutral. They were associated with measurably increased risks of cardiovascular events, accelerated bone fragility, elevated cancer risk, and in one particularly alarming cluster of findings, a significant correlation with faster cognitive decline supplements. The bottles sitting next to the orange juice, the ones we are told to take for our health. Now, I want to be very clear about something, because this conversation has 2 sides, and both of them are equally important. The same research literature that exposes which supplements are dangerous for older adults also reveals which ones are genuinely transformative. There are 4 vitamins and nutrients that the aging body, particularly after 65, becomes critically unable to obtain in sufficient quantities from food and sunlight alone. 4 that research now considers essential protection. Not optional, not experimental, essential. Today I am giving you both lists. The 4 vitamins that seniors should stop taking immediately, and the 4 that your body may be desperately deficient in right now. Deficiencies that could be driving the fatigue, the brain fog, the poor sleep, and the loss of strength that too many seniors have simply accepted as inevitable. And I need you to hear this clearly. They are not inevitable. In many cases, they are entirely correctable. Before we go any further, I have to warn you about something. The number 1 vitamin on my worst list today is something that appears in hundreds of best-selling senior supplement formulas. It is marketed specifically to older adults, often under packaging that says things like bone health or complete senior nutrition. And the research on what it does to the aging cardiovascular system is something I believe every single person over 65 needs to know before they take another dose. So please stay with me all the way through. But first, I want to hear from you. Drop your age in the comments below and tell me, how many supplements are you currently taking each day? I read every single comment on this channel, everyone, and your answer today will directly shape the content I make for this community going forward. Now let us get into it. We are starting with the 4 vitamins and supplements that research now strongly suggests seniors should stop taking or dramatically reconsider. And I want to be precise right now. I am not talking about getting these nutrients from food. I am talking specifically about isolated, supplemental doses that arrive in capsules and tablets and powders. This is a critical distinction, and we will return to it. Let us count down from 4 to 1, from concerning to genuinely dangerous for the aging body. The 4 worst vitamins for seniors. Number 4, high-dose supplemental iron. Without a confirmed deficiency, number 4 on our worst list is something that sits in more senior multivitamin formulas than almost anything else, and it is one of the most misunderstood nutrients in all of medicine when it comes to aging: iron. Now, I want you to understand immediately what I am and am not saying here. Iron deficiency anemia is real. It is serious. And when a physician confirms through proper blood testing that a senior is genuinely iron deficient, appropriate supplementation under medical supervision is entirely appropriate. That is not what we are discussing. What we are discussing is the enormous number of seniors, particularly men and postmenopausal women, who are taking iron supplements without a confirmed deficiency, simply because iron is present in their daily multivitamin, or because they heard it helps with fatigue. Here is the biology that your supplement bottle will never tell you. Throughout the childbearing years, the female body had a brilliantly built-in mechanism for eliminating excess iron menstruation. Once that process ends permanently, the body loses its primary iron excretion pathway. Simultaneously, after the age of 65, the body's ability to regulate iron absorption becomes less precise. You absorb more than you need, and you have fewer ways to eliminate the excess. The result is iron accumulation, and iron, when it accumulates in body tissues in excess, is profoundly pro-oxidant. Think of it like leaving a metal tool out in the rain. It rusts. That visible orange deterioration is oxidation. That same process, driven by excess iron at the cellular level, accelerates the damage to DNA tissues and the mitochondrial membranes that power every single cell in your aging body. Researchers at the University of California published an analysis of over 8,000 adults aged 65 and older and found that seniors with elevated iron markers, not deficiency but excess, showed significantly higher rates of cardiovascular disease progression, liver stress, and joint inflammation over a 5-year follow-up period compared to those with optimal levels. But here is what disturbs me most about unchecked iron accumulation in older adults. Research from neurologists tracking brain imaging studies has linked elevated iron deposits in specific brain regions to accelerated neurodegeneration. Iron accumulates disproportionately in the hippocampus and the substantia nigra, precisely the areas most implicated in Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease. We now have imaging data showing that seniors with higher brain iron concentrations show faster loss of gray matter volume and faster cognitive decline than age-matched peers with healthy iron balance. And yet many popular senior multivitamins still contain iron as a standard ingredient. What you should do immediately is check every supplement you currently take for iron content. If you are not taking a physician-prescribed iron supplement for a confirmed deficiency, you should not be supplementing iron. Period. If fatigue is the reason you suspected iron deficiency in the first place, ask your doctor for a full iron panel including ferritin. Ferritin is the stored iron measurement, and it will tell you precisely whether deficiency or accumulation is your actual biological reality. I think of my patient Warren, 72 years old, from Louisville, Kentucky. Warren had been taking a men's senior formula vitamin for 6 years, genuinely believing it was supporting his energy and his health. When he came to me with worsening fatigue, escalating joint pain, and elevated liver enzymes that his previous physician had not investigated, we ran a comprehensive iron panel. His ferritin level was nearly 4 times the upper limit of the normal reference range. He had significant iron overload driven entirely by his daily multivitamin. We discontinued the supplement, addressed the accumulation through dietary adjustments and monitored blood donation, and with 4 months, Warren told me his joint pain had reduced by more than half, and his energy had genuinely returned for the first time in years. Warren was not sick. Warren was oversupplemented. And the difference between those two things is the difference between a manageable correction and a decade of unnecessary suffering. Number 3. High-dose preformed vitamin A. Retinol. Number 3 on our worst list is one that genuinely surprises my patients when I bring it up, because this vitamin is associated in most people's minds with vitality, immunity, and healthy eyes. And in its natural dietary form, that association is entirely earned. The problem is not the vitamin itself. The problem is the dose and the form. Number 3 is high-dose supplemental vitamin A, specifically preformed vitamin A, also called retinol. Let me explain why the distinction between preformed vitamin A and beta-carotene is so absolutely critical, because most people have never had this explained to them clearly. Beta-carotene, the orange pigment found in carrots, sweet potatoes, and leafy greens, is what scientists call a provitamin. Your body converts it into vitamin A as needed, and if you have enough vitamin A already, your body simply stops converting it. It self-regulates. It is inherently safe in food amounts. Preformed vitamin A, retinol, the form found in most vitamin supplements and in high concentrations in liver and cod liver oil, does not have that self-regulating mechanism. It enters your bloodstream directly, it accumulates in your liver, and at the doses found in many popular supplements marketed to seniors for eye health or immune support, the accumulation over months and years creates measurable serious toxicity. For seniors, there is a specific and deeply alarming consequence of high-dose retinol supplementation that the scientific literature has documented repeatedly: dramatically accelerated bone loss. A study published in the Journal of Bone and Mineral Research tracked over 7,000 adults aged 60 older and found that those with the highest retinol intake showed a nearly 70% higher rate of hip fracture compared to those with Moderate intake, not osteoporosis simply from calcium deficiency, not from falls alone. Fracture risk driven specifically by excess vitamin A at supplemental doses. The mechanism is direct. Preformed vitamin A at high doses activates osteoclasts, the cells whose job is to break down bone tissue, while simultaneously suppressing osteoblasts, the cells responsible for building it. You are essentially tipping the balance of your bone remodeling process toward demolition. Think of your bone structure like a building that is constantly being renovated. Osteoblasts are the construction teams. Osteoclasts are the demolition crews. In a healthy body, those teams work in careful balance. High-dose retinol sends the demolition crew into overdrive and quietly sends the construction workers home. The structure deteriorates faster than it can ever be repaired. There is also the matter of vitamin A's competitive relationship with vitamin D, which I will discuss extensively in the second half of this video. Research from the University of Bergen in Norway showed that high serum retinol levels actively interfere with the cellular receptors that vitamin D uses to exert its protective effects on bone density, immune function, and cognitive health. If you are taking the vitamin D supplementation I am going to recommend in just a few minutes, excess retinol may be dismantling its benefits entirely without your knowledge. The practical prescription here is straightforward. Look at every supplement you currently take and identify the vitamin A content listed on the label. If it exceeds 1,500 micrograms of retinol equivalents, that is too high for a senior's daily formula. Choose products that use beta-carotene rather than retinol for their vitamin A contribution. And get your vitamin A from food. Liver consumed occasionally, orange and yellow vegetables eaten daily. Your body will handle that brilliantly and safely. I had a patient named Gloria, 76 years old, from Raleigh, North Carolina. She came to me after her second hip fracture in 3 years. Her bone density scans showed deterioration dramatically beyond what her age alone would explain. When I reviewed her supplement history in detail, she had been taking a high-dose immune support formula containing 10,000 international units of preformed vitamin A every single day for 4 years. That is more than 6 times the safe upper limit established for older adults. We eliminated the supplement. We rebuilt her entire nutrient protocol around food-based vitamin A sources, and her next bone density scan, taken 18 months later, showed stabilization for the first time in years. Her fracturing days ended the day we removed the retinol. Her bones had not aged her prematurely. Her supplement had, and understanding that distinction gave her something invaluable, a way forward. Number 2. High-dose synthetic vitamin E. Number 2 on our worst list is one that the fitness and longevity industry spent decades promoting with tremendous enthusiasm, and the research reversal on this particular supplement has been nothing short of dramatic and nothing short of a cautionary tale for every supplement-taking senior in America. Number 2 is high-dose vitamin E, specifically the synthetic form found in most supplements called DL-alpha-tocopherol. Vitamin E's story is a sobering lesson in what happens when science chases a compelling hypothesis without waiting for the actual outcome data from long-term human trials. The hypothesis was elegant. Vitamin E is an antioxidant. Oxidative stress drives aging and disease. Therefore, high-dose vitamin E should slow aging and protect against the diseases we associate with it. Cardiovascular disease, cancer, cognitive decline. For decades, this logic was so compelling that millions of older adults were advised to take supplemental vitamin E. Some physicians recommended it enthusiastically. Then the large-scale clinical trials began delivering their results. And those results were not what anyone expected. The alpha-tocopherol beta-carotene cancer prevention trial, which followed over 29,000 men, found that those supplementing with vitamin E in isolated form did not show lower cancer rates. In specific cancer categories, the outcomes were worse. Separately, a major meta-analysis published in the Annals of Internal Medicine reviewed 19 randomized controlled trials involving more than 130,000 participants and reached a conclusion that sent genuine shockwaves through the supplement industry. Supplemental doses of vitamin E above 400 international units per day were associated with a statistically significant increase in all-cause mortality. Higher doses of an antioxidant were linked to earlier death. Why? Because the antioxidant hypothesis, while logically appealing, missed a critical piece of biological reality. Oxidative stress in the body is not purely destructive. In controlled, appropriate amounts, it serves essential signaling functions. It tells damaged cells when to die through apoptosis. It activates critical immune responses. It drives adaptations to exercise that make muscles stronger and more resilient. When you flood the body with high-dose antioxidants in supplemental form, you interfere with these precise signaling processes in ways that are, in an aging body particularly, profoundly disruptive. Think of oxidative stress like a fire alarm system installed throughout a building. A functional, calibrated alarm system is essential. It saves lives when real fires occur. Dumping water over every single alarm sensor in the building might seem like a protective instinct, but what you are actually doing is silencing the alarm exactly when the real fire starts. The fire burns undetected. The building is lost. For seniors specifically, the cardiovascular consequences of high-dose vitamin E deserve particular attention and urgency. Vitamin E at supplemental doses has measurable anticoagulant effects. It thins the blood. For seniors taking daily aspirin, blood pressure medications, or anticoagulants like warfarin or the newer blood thinners, this creates an additive thinning effect that dramatically and dangerously increases bleeding risk. A study from the Cleveland Clinic found that among cardiac patients taking anticoagulant therapy, those also supplementing with 400 or more international units of vitamin E daily had a 34% higher rate of serious bleeding events compared to those not supplementing with vitamin E. If you are over 65 and you are currently taking any blood thinner or daily aspirin, supplemental vitamin E is not a trivial consideration. It is a potentially life-altering drug interaction that your physician needs to know about immediately. Get your vitamin E from foods. Sunflower seeds, almonds, hazelnuts, spinach, and avocado provide abundant vitamin E in the natural mixed tocopherol form that your body was designed to process safely. Whole food sources provide antioxidant protection within a complex matrix of complementary compounds that no isolated supplement can replicate or replace. I want to hear from you right now in the comments. Had you ever heard about vitamin E's risks for seniors before today? Leave your age and your honest answer below. I read everything you write and your responses matter deeply to me. Number 1 worst. High-dose supplemental calcium without vitamin K2. And now we arrive at number 1 on our worst list. The vitamin I promised you at the very start of this video. The one hiding in plain sight inside hundreds of supplements marketed specifically to older adults, sold at every pharmacy, and recommended for decades as the cornerstone of senior bone health. Number 1 is high-dose supplemental calcium, not calcium from food, not calcium from dairy, leafy greens, or sardines. Supplemental calcium in the carbonate or citrate form that appears in senior bone health formulas, typically at doses of 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams per day. Before I explain what this does to the aging cardiovascular system, I need you to understand something about how nutritional science evolves. For decades, the logic seemed completely airtight. Bones need calcium. Older adults lose bone density. Therefore, give older adults calcium supplements. The supplement industry built an enormous, profitable market on this reasoning. Billions of dollars annually. Doctors recommended it routinely. The problem is that biology is rarely that simple. And when the large-scale outcome trials began reporting their results, the medical community was forced into a genuinely uncomfortable reckoning with what they had been advising. The Women's Health Initiative, one of the largest randomized controlled trials in the entire history of American medicine, followed over 36,000 postmenopausal women for an average of 7 years. When the calcium supplementation data was carefully analyzed, researchers found something they had not expected and were not looking for. Women taking calcium supplements had a 22% higher risk of cardiovascular events, including heart attacks, compared to women taking a placebo. 22%. From a supplement that hundreds of millions of people were taking specifically for their health, and the biological mechanism makes complete sense once you understand it. When you consume calcium from food, it arrives embedded in a complex nutritional matrix of complementary compounds that regulate its absorption, its distribution through the body, and its final deposition into tissue. Your gut absorbs it gradually. Your bloodstream handles measured, manageable increases in calcium concentration. The calcium, guided by the right biological signals, goes where it is needed. When you take a calcium supplement, particularly at the doses in most senior formulas, you create a sudden, sharp spike in blood calcium levels. A spike that has no nutritional context around it. And here is the critical problem that most seniors and most physicians have never connected. After the age of 65, the majority of adults are significantly deficient in vitamin K2, the nutrient that acts as your body's biological traffic controller, directing calcium away from arteries and into bones where it actually belongs. Without adequate K2, that calcium spike has nowhere safe to go, and calcium in the bloodstream follows the path of least resistance. It deposits in arterial walls, in heart valve tissue, in the soft tissues and organs that should remain supple and flexible. Think of K2 as the air traffic controller at a major international airport. Without that controller on duty, incoming aircraft, or in this case incoming calcium ions, simply land wherever they can find space. In runways that should be for other traffic, in taxiways, in grass. The result is chaos. And in your body, the result is the arterial calcification and coronary stiffening that drives cardiovascular disease. A landmark study from the University of Auckland analyzed data from 15 randomized controlled trials and found that seniors taking calcium supplements without adequate vitamin K2 showed measurably faster coronary artery calcification than those not supplementing. Coronary artery calcification is one of the strongest independent predictors of heart attack risk that exists in modern cardiology. Here is what you should do instead, and this is vitally important. You do not need to abandon calcium support for your bones entirely. You need to get it from food wherever possible. Dairy products, canned sardines and salmon with the bones included, firm tofu, dark leafy greens, and almonds provide calcium in a form your body handles beautifully. And if you are working with your physician and genuinely need supplemental calcium, the dose should be 500 milligrams or less at any single time, always taken with vitamin K2, specifically the MK7 form, which research from Maastricht University shows is the most bioavailable and most effective form for directing calcium precisely where it needs to go. My patient Joan, 79 years old, from Tampa, Florida, had been taking a 1,200 milligram calcium supplement every single day for 11 years. She was following exactly what her physician had advised a decade earlier. When I first saw her, she had an echocardiogram showing significant aortic valve calcification. Her cardiologist had told her it was simply the expected consequence of aging. When I reviewed her supplement history in detail and looked at her vitamin K2 intake, which was essentially zero, the picture became unmistakably clear. We discontinued the calcium supplement. We shifted her to a food-first calcium approach. We added K2 supplementation in the MK7 form. Her subsequent cardiac imaging showed no further progression in valvular calcification. Her cardiologist, after reviewing the research I shared with him, began counseling his own elderly patients very differently. Joan did not have bad luck. Joan had outdated information, and information we can always update. Now, before we move into the vitamins you absolutely should be taking every single day, I want to pause for just a moment, because I know this information is dense and perhaps unsettling, and you may be looking at your supplement shelf with entirely new eyes right now. If this video is changing how you think about what you've been putting into your body, please take 5 seconds and hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. I release new science-backed content specifically for adults over 60 every single week, because I believe you deserve honest, evidence-based information delivered with the respect you have genuinely earned. Subscribe now and turn on the notification bell so you never miss what we cover next. Now, let us talk about the 4 vitamins and nutrients that the aging body genuinely needs, that food and sunlight alone cannot reliably provide after age 65, and that the research now describes not as optional add-ons, but as foundational interventions for protecting your brain, your muscles, your heart, and your independence for the decades ahead. These are not wellness trends. These are not marketing strategies. These are the result of decades of rigorously conducted science in populations of older adults, and they could genuinely change the trajectory of how you age. The 4 vitamins seniors must take daily. Number 4 must take vitamin B12, methylcobalamin, sublingual form. Number 4 on our must-take list is one that most physicians agree is critically undersupplemented in the senior population, and its deficiency, which is extraordinarily common after 65, mimics so closely the symptoms of early dementia that it represents one of the most important things any senior should have properly tested immediately. Number 4 is vitamin B12, specifically in the biologically active form called methylcobalamin. Here is what happens to B12 absorption as we age, and almost no one explains this clearly to their patients. Vitamin B12 from food requires a very specific protein produced by the cells lining your stomach to be absorbed properly. That protein is called intrinsic factor, and after the age of 50, intrinsic factor production begins declining steadily. By 65, a significant proportion of seniors are no longer producing enough intrinsic factor to absorb the B12 from their food. Regardless of how much B12 they eat, the nutrient is there. The biological machinery to capture it is failing. Research from the landmark Framingham Heart Study found that nearly 40% of American adults had B12 levels in the low normal range. But when the researchers focused specifically on adults over 65, the picture was far more alarming. Subclinical B12 deficiency, meaning levels low enough to impair neurological function, but not yet low enough to trigger a formal anemia diagnosis on standard testing, was present in more than 30% of older adults studied. 30%. Nearly 1 in 3 seniors may be walking around with inadequate B12 for optimal brain function right now. And the symptoms of that deficiency are not vague or ambiguous. They are specific, measurable, and profoundly alarming when you understand what they represent. Cognitive slowing, word-finding difficulty in the middle of sentences, peripheral numbness and tingling in the hands and feet, fatigue that sleep does not relieve, depression that resists treatment, memory lapses that frighten both the person experiencing them and the family watching. I have personally sat across from patients who had been told they were developing dementia, whose cognitive impairment reversed substantially when their B12 deficiency was identified and corrected. The brain requires B12 to maintain the protective myelin sheath surrounding its nerve fibers, to synthesize the neurotransmitters regulating mood and cognition, and to clear a toxic amino acid called homocysteine that damages blood vessel walls and accumulates in the brains of Alzheimer's patients in alarming concentrations. Research from Oxford University scanned the brains of elderly adults with confirmed B12 deficiency and found they were losing brain volume at a rate 6 times faster than B12-sufficient peers of the same age. 6 times. That is not a secondary finding buried in a footnote. That is brain tissue disappearing faster from a correctable, addressable nutritional deficiency. Now, the form matters enormously, and I cannot emphasize this point strongly enough. Most B12 supplements sold in pharmacies and grocery stores contain a form called cyanocobalamin, which is the cheapest and most commercially available form. But older adults, particularly those with certain common genetic variations in B12 metabolism, convert cyanocobalamin to active B12 quite inefficiently. Methylcobalamin, the biologically active form your neurons can utilize immediately, is significantly superior for seniors, and take it sublingually, meaning dissolved under the tongue rather than swallowed. This route of administration bypasses the gut absorption problem entirely and delivers the vitamin directly into the bloodstream without requiring intrinsic factor at all. I treated a woman named Sylvia, 74 years old, from Memphis, Tennessee. She had been evaluated by 2 separate neurologists who had suggested she was in the early stages of vascular dementia. Her memory had declined noticeably over 18 months. She was struggling with familiar tasks that had once been completely automatic. Her family was devastated and frightened. When I ran a comprehensive panel that included an active B12 marker called methylmalonic acid, her values were dramatically elevated, indicating profound cellular B12 deficiency despite a serum B12 level that appeared borderline acceptable. The standard test her previous doctors had ordered. Standard serum B12 testing frequently misses functional deficiency. We started her on sublingual methylcobalamin daily. At her 4-month follow-up, Sylvia's family sat in my office in tears, not tears of grief, as they had come prepared for. Her neurologist repeated the cognitive assessment and found her scores had risen significantly. Sylvia told me she felt like someone had cleaned a window she had been trying to see clearly through for 2 years. Sylvia was not developing dementia. Sylvia was B12 deficient, and the difference between those 2 diagnoses is, quite literally, everything. Number 3 must take omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA at therapeutic doses. Number 3 on our must-take list is one that the research community has rallied behind with increasing conviction and consistency over the past 2 decades. And its benefits for the aging brain, the aging cardiovascular system, and the chronic inflammation that drives virtually every major disease of aging are among the most robustly documented findings in all of nutritional science. Number 3 is omega-3 fatty acids, specifically EPA and DHA, in adequate therapeutic doses. Let me tell you immediately why this is not the same as simply eating a piece of salmon once a week, because that is the most common misunderstanding I encounter. The 2 biologically active components of omega-3 fatty acids, EPA, which stands for eicosapentaenoic acid, and DHA, which stands for docosahexaenoic acid, are the specific molecular forms that the body uses directly for anti-inflammatory signaling, cardiovascular protection, and the literal structural composition of brain tissue. Your body can theoretically convert plant-based omega-3s like those from flaxseed into EPA and DHA, but in aging adults that conversion efficiency has dropped to somewhere between 5 and 10%. You would need to consume enormous quantities of plant-based omega-3s daily to achieve meaningful protective blood levels of EPA and DHA. And here is why those blood levels matter so profoundly for the aging brain. Your brain is, by weight, approximately 60%, and DHA specifically is the dominant structural fat in your neuronal membranes, the very architecture of every thought you think and every memory you form. After the age of 65, DHA content in brain tissue begins declining measurably unless it is continually replenished. Research from leading neurological research institutes has found that adults with the lowest blood DHA levels showed hippocampal volumes that were significantly reduced and rates of cognitive decline that were significantly faster than those with optimal omega-3 levels. The hippocampus, the brain's memory consolidation center, the structure targeted first and most devastatingly by Alzheimer's disease. On the cardiovascular side, the VITAL trial conducted by researchers at Harvard Medical School followed more than 25,000 adults and found that omega-3 supplementation at therapeutic doses significantly reduced the risk of cardiovascular events, with particularly pronounced benefits in adults over 65 and in those who consumed less than 1.5 servings of fish per week. EPA specifically has been shown to reduce triglyceride levels by 20 to 30% at adequate doses, a magnitude of reduction comparable to certain pharmaceutical medications for many patients, and without the muscle-related side effects that trouble a significant proportion of seniors on statin therapy. And then there is the inflammation question. The same chronic low-grade inflammaging process that researchers at Harvard Medical School have identified as the central driver of cardiovascular disease, cognitive decline, cancer progression, and accelerated biological aging is directly and powerfully suppressed by adequate EPA and DHA intake. These fatty acids are the precursors to a class of molecular signaling compounds called resolvins and protectins, which do not simply reduce inflammatory processes but actively and specifically resolve them. Think of chronic inflammation in the aging body like a thermostat that has become stuck in the heat-on position. EPA and DHA do not just lower the temperature temporarily, they reset the thermostat. The practical guidance is this: for seniors, research supports a combined daily dose of at least 2 grams of EPA and DHA together from a quality fish oil product. Look specifically for triglyceride form fish oil, which absorbs up to 70% better than the ethyl ester form found in most budget-tier supplements. Take it with your largest meal of the day, which maximizes absorption dramatically, and pair it with astaxanthin, the powerful carotenoid antioxidant that gives wild salmon its characteristic pink color, which research has shown protects the omega-3 oils themselves from oxidizing inside the body before they can exert their benefits. My patient Richard, 73 years old, from Charlotte, North Carolina, came to me with triglycerides of 420 and inflammatory markers his cardiologist described as seriously elevated. He had declined the statin his cardiologist recommended because of a previous muscle pain experience on that class of medications. We started him on a therapeutic omega-3 protocol paired with Mediterranean dietary principles. At his 4-month follow-up, his triglycerides had dropped to 210. His inflammatory markers had normalized. His cardiologist called my office personally, which does not happen often, to ask specifically about the protocol we had used. Richard made no other significant changes during that period. The omega-3s, properly dosed and properly delivered, did the work. Number 2 must-take. Magnesium glycinate. Number 2 on our must-take list is the mineral that I believe may be the single most widespread and most consequent deficiency in the entire senior population, and the symptoms of its absence are so varied and so ordinary that most seniors have simply accepted them as the unavoidable texture of growing older. Number 2 is magnesium, specifically in the glycinate form. Research using NANI's data, which is the National Nutrition Survey, sampling the broadest cross-section of the American population, consistently finds that between 70 and 80% of adults over 60 are not meeting their basic magnesium needs from dietary intake alone. 70 to 80%. This is a mineral involved in over 300 distinct enzymatic reactions throughout the human body. A mineral that is essential for producing energy inside every mitochondrion in every cell. A mineral required for DNA repair, protein synthesis, blood glucose regulation, blood pressure management, nerve signal transmission, and the critical regulation of calcium movement across cell membranes. And most seniors are chronically deficient in it. Why? Because the modern agricultural food supply provides dramatically less magnesium than it did 50 years ago due to extensive soil depletion. because medications commonly taken by seniors, including proton pump inhibitors for acid reflux, loop diuretics for blood pressure and heart failure, and certain common diabetes medications actively deplete magnesium from the body. And because after the age of 65, intestinal magnesium absorption declines and urinary magnesium excretion increases simultaneously. You absorb less, you lose more. The deficit compounds silently over years. The consequences span virtually every system of the aging body. For the brain, magnesium acts as the gatekeeper of NMDA receptors, the molecular channels most critical for memory formation, synaptic plasticity, and cognitive flexibility. Research from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology showed that optimizing brain magnesium levels through specialized supplementation improved cognitive functions significantly in clinical populations, with measurable improvements in learning capacity, working memory, and memory consolidation in adults over 60. For sleep, magnesium is the foundational mineral for GABA function. GABA is your brain's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter, the molecular signal that tells an overactive, overstimulated nervous system to finally calm and rest. Without adequate magnesium, GABA function is compromised, and the racing thoughts, the inability to fall asleep, the early morning waking after only a few hours that so many seniors describe as their normal sleep pattern, are frequently direct expressions of magnesium insufficiency. For the cardiovascular system, magnesium regulates the tone of the smooth muscle cells lining your arteries. Magnesium deficiency causes arterial constriction, elevated resting blood pressure, and increased susceptibility to cardiac arrhythmia. Research published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that magnesium intake was inversely and significantly correlated with cardiovascular mortality across large studied populations. For blood sugar regulation, magnesium is essential for insulin receptor function at the cellular level. When magnesium is depleted, your cells become progressively less sensitive to insulin signals, contributing directly to the rising fasting glucose levels and eventual insulin resistance that affects a remarkable proportion of the senior population and that so many physicians attribute simply to aging rather than to correctable nutritional deficiency. The form is critical, and I want to be specific. Many magnesium supplements sold widely contain magnesium oxide, which has poor bioavailability, typically less than 4% absorption, and causes gastrointestinal distress in many people, leading them to abandon the supplement entirely. Magnesium glycinate, where the mineral is bound to the amino acid glycine, absorbs dramatically more efficiently, does not cause digestive discomfort, and glycine itself carries independent benefits for sleep quality and systemic inflammation that powerfully compound the magnesium's effects. The dosing for most seniors is between 300 and 400 milligrams of elemental magnesium glycinate taken with dinner or in the hour before bed when the body utilizes it most efficiently for overnight recovery processes. I want to tell you about Donald, 71 years old, from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Donald came to me with a constellation of complaints that touched almost every system. He was sleeping poorly despite going to bed exhausted. His blood pressure required 2 medications to control despite genuinely good dietary habits. His fasting glucose was creeping into pre-diabetic territory despite modest diet changes. He had recurring muscle cramps in his calves at night that disrupted whatever sleep he was getting, and his cognitive assessments showed some slowing that concerned his internist. When I ran a red blood cell magnesium test, which is a far more accurate measurement than standard serum magnesium because magnesium lives primarily inside cells rather than in the bloodstream, his levels were severely depleted. We started magnesium glycinate at 400 milligrams nightly. Within 6 weeks, Donald called my office. His leg cramps had stopped completely. He was sleeping through the night for the first time in years without waking. His home blood pressure monitoring showed readings averaging 9 points lower. He told me, "I feel like someone quietly fixed something inside me that I didn't even know was broken." At his 3-month follow-up, his fasting glucose had improved measurably, and his blood pressure management was reviewed with his cardiologist for potential medication reduction. One mineral, more than 300 biological processes it was no longer supporting, and for Donald, a transformation that years of pharmaceutical intervention had never come close to producing. Number 1 must take. Vitamin D3 paired with vitamin K2 MK7 form, and now we arrive at number 1 on our must-take list. The vitamin that I believe every single adult over 65 in the developed world should be taking. The one supported by decades of evidence from thousands of independent studies across multiple continents, and the one that, paired inseparably with its essential cofactor, represents what I call the most powerful, most affordable, most broadly protective daily intervention in all of senior health medicine. Number 1 is vitamin D3, paired always and inseparably with vitamin K2 in the MK7 form. Let me tell you first why these two must always be discussed together. And then let me share with you what the research on vitamin D3 deficiency reveals about what is actually driving some of the most feared conditions of aging, because the science here is breathtaking. After the age of 60, the skin's capacity to synthesize vitamin D from sunlight exposure drops by approximately 50%. This happens because the layer of skin cells responsible for D synthesis thins and becomes less metabolically active with age. Simultaneously, the kidneys, which convert the inactive form of vitamin D into its biologically active hormone form called calcitriol, become less efficient at performing that conversion. And simultaneously, the vitamin D receptors present in virtually every tissue in the body, numbering in the thousands and regulating genes involved in immune response, inflammatory signaling, cellular growth regulation, cardiovascular protection, and neurological maintenance, become less sensitive to the D that is available. You are synthesizing less, activating less, and responding less effectively to what you do have. All three of these impairments occurring at the same time, compounding each other, and almost never discussed at a routine physical examination. The result is that research across multiple large international populations consistently finds that 60 to 80% of adults over 65 have insufficient vitamin D levels. In northern latitudes, in individuals with darker skin, and in homebound or institutionalized seniors, those numbers climb even higher. A research team at Harvard Medical School analyzing data from the landmark VITAL trial found that vitamin D3 supplementation at 2,000 international units daily was associated with a significant reduction in cancer mortality. Not just reduced cancer incidence, but reduced likelihood of dying from cancers that did develop. The biological mechanism involves vitamin D's role in regulating apoptosis, the programmed cell death that normally prevents damaged cells from proliferating out of control. Separate research published in JAMA Neurology found that adults with optimal vitamin D levels showed a significantly lower risk of developing Alzheimer's disease and experienced meaningfully slower cognitive decline over follow-up periods of 4 to 6 years compared to those with deficient levels. And a study from the University of Edinburgh analyzing data from over 12,000 adults found that severe vitamin D deficiency was associated with more than double the risk of developing dementia compared to sufficiency, more than double, from a deficiency that is almost universal among seniors and that costs pennies per day to address. Beyond dementia, the vitamin D literature touches virtually every domain of senior health. Falls and fractures. Vitamin D is essential for the fast-twitch muscle fiber recruitment and neuromuscular coordination that keeps you upright when you stumble. Research consistently shows that seniors with optimal D levels fall significantly less than those who are deficient. Immune function. Vitamin D does not merely support immune regulation. It is the central conductor of your innate immune system's first-line response, the response that determines whether an infection is cleared efficiently or becomes a prolonged, damaging inflammatory event. Depression. Vitamin D receptors are densely distributed throughout the brain regions most associated with mood regulation, and multiple rigorous studies have found strong inverse relationships between D levels and depression severity in older adults. Now here is where K2 becomes not just beneficial but absolutely essential, and this connects directly to the calcium conversation from the first half of this video. Vitamin D3 increases calcium absorption from the digestive tract dramatically. This is one of its most important functions for skeletal health, but if you do not have adequate vitamin K2, that additional absorbed calcium does not know where to travel. It circulates in the bloodstream. It deposits in arterial walls. It contributes to the precise cardiovascular calcification that the Women's Health Initiative documented and that costs tens of thousands of seniors their lives each year. K2, specifically the MK7 form, which has a 24-hour half-life in the body compared to the brief 4-hour half-life of K1, activates two critical proteins that are your body's calcium directors. Osteocalcin, which incorporates calcium into bone matrix where it strengthens structure, and matrix GLA protein, which actively removes calcium deposits from arterial walls and soft tissues where it causes damage. K2 is the traffic controller that tells calcium precisely and unerringly where to go. Without K2, vitamin D3's increased calcium absorption becomes a liability. With K2, it becomes the most powerful bone-protective nutritional combination available to an aging body. Research from Maastricht University in the Netherlands followed over 16,000 adults for 8 years and found that every 10 microgram increase in daily vitamin K2 intake was associated with a 9% reduction in coronary heart disease mortality. The researchers specifically noted that K2 appeared to confer cardiovascular protection that K1, the form commonly found in leafy green vegetables, did not replicate. The practical prescription for most seniors is vitamin D3 at 2,000 to 4,000 international units daily, always taken with the largest meal of the day because D3 is fat-soluble and requires dietary fat for meaningful absorption, combined with 100 to 200 micrograms of vitamin K2 in the MK7 form. Before starting supplementation, ask your physician for a 25-hydroxy-vitamin D blood test. Know your baseline. Some seniors who are severely deficient may need a physician-supervised loading protocol before transitioning to standard maintenance dosing. I want to tell you about my patient Caroline, 78 years old, from Portland, Maine. Caroline came to me after her third visit to a rheumatologist for escalating and debilitating joint pain, persistent bone-deep fatigue, and what she described as a heaviness that she carried in her body every single waking hour. She had been comprehensively tested for rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, and fibromyalgia. Every specialized test returned negative. Her previous physicians had attributed her profound suffering to aging. Her 25-hydroxy vitamin D level was 11 nanograms per milliliter. The reference range for sufficiency begins at 30. She was not mildly low. She was profoundly, severely deficient. We initiated a supervised loading protocol followed by maintenance vitamin D3 with MK7K2 daily. At her 3-month follow-up, Caroline sat across from me and said something I will carry with me for the rest of my career. She said, "Dr. Hayes, I feel like I spent 3 years living in a shadow, and I did not even know how dark it was until now." Her joint pain had reduced by more than 60%. Her fatigue was transforming into something she had forgotten was possible, actual energy. Her mood had lifted substantially, and her subsequent bone density imaging showed that the bone loss trajectory she had been on had meaningfully and measurably slowed. Caroline was not simply aging. Caroline was depleted, and depletion with the right knowledge and the right intervention is always fixable. Here is what I want you to carry with you when you close this video today. The supplement industry earns more than $50 billion annually in the United States alone, and a significant portion of that revenue comes from products targeting older adults, packaged in the language of vitality, independence, and healthy aging. These products sit on pharmacy shelves. They appear in Sunday circulars. They are recommended by well-meaning people in your life who are working from information that is years or decades out of date. But your aging body is not the same body you had at 35. The way you absorb nutrients has fundamentally changed. The way you process, store, and eliminate them has changed. The consequences of both excess and deficiency have become more severe, more rapid, and more directly consequential to your independence. What you put in your body every single day either supports the biology of resilient, functional aging or quietly undermines it. And for too long, that conversation has been happening without your full and informed participation. You have been handed bottles rather than knowledge, labels rather than science, marketing rather than medicine. Today, that changes. The 4 vitamins we discussed that seniors should urgently reconsider: high-dose iron supplementation without a confirmed deficiency, preformed high-dose vitamin A as retinol, high-dose synthetic vitamin E, and high-dose supplemental calcium taken without vitamin K2. These are not obscure dangers buried in specialty journals that no one reads. The research is published. The mechanisms are understood. You simply were not told, and that is something I cannot accept. And the 4 that your aging body almost certainly needs right now: methylcobalamin B12 taken sublingually, therapeutic omega-3 fatty acids in the EPA and DHA forms, magnesium in the glycinate form nightly, and vitamin D3 paired always and inseparably with K2 in the MK7 form. These are not exotic interventions. They are not expensive. They are not complicated. They are among the most studied, most evidence-supported nutritional interventions in all of senior health medicine. Take this information to your next physician appointment. Bring your supplement bag. Ask for the blood tests that confirm your actual nutritional status. A 25-hydroxy vitamin D test. Active B12 markers including methylmalonic acid, ferritin for iron, red blood cell magnesium rather than serum magnesium. These are straightforward tests. They are largely covered by insurance, and the information they provide could genuinely alter the direction of the next decade of your life. Because here is what I know with absolute certainty after 30 years of this work. The seniors who thrive and remain independent into their 80s and 90s are not the ones who took the most supplements. They are the ones who took the right ones, who asked the right questions, who refused to accept that confusion and fatigue and cognitive fog and preventable fragility were simply the fixed price of living a long life. It is never too late to optimize what you are giving your body. It is never too late to remove what is harming it. And it is never too late to give your biology the precise tools it is asking for in this chapter of your life. Your health is worth that conversation. You are worth that conversation. If this video gave you something valuable today, something that makes you look at your supplement shelf differently, or that gives you a specific question to bring to your physician at your next appointment, please subscribe to this channel right now and share this video with someone you love who is in this season of life. We release new evidence-based content specifically for adults over 60 every single week, because I believe this community deserves the very best information available, delivered clearly, delivered honestly, and delivered with the deep respect you have earned. Hit the notification bell so you never miss what we cover next. And now I want to hear from you. Leave me a comment below. Tell me how many supplements you are currently taking. Tell me which one from today's list surprised you most. Tell me your age. Tell me where you are in this journey. I will read every single comment, every single one. And your story may be exactly what another viewer needs to read today to make a change that saves them years. I'm Dr. Nathan Collins. Take care of yourself. You are absolutely